Originally, this was going to be a 3-part video that had to do with, and by that I mean 3 parts in one, that had to do with, like, Twisted Wonderland, the new anime season that's starting, and Good Omens, but the truth is that Good Omens became a long enough segment that it needed its own video. So that's what we'll be doing now, and I'm going to go ahead and warn you that what I have to say about Good Omens contains spoilers. So if you haven't watched the Amazon Prime series for it or have read the book, I recommend that you do that before you watch the rest of this video. And if you just don't care or you've already seen it, then continue watching. I also want you to note that there's going to be some things I talk about that you might be like, ah, and like vehemently disagree with me with, and that's totally fine. Because that's life. But yeah, hopefully you enjoy this video and you at least find it to be entertaining, if nothing else. I'm not going to go that in depth about it just because I'll be here forever and I don't want to do that to you. But I do want to say a few things because there were some things that happened here in the States when it was coming out that I don't agree with this particular kind of want to shut down freedom of expression that a lot of those people in those groups seem to have. But I will say that I understand, because I unfortunately have had to go to school with people that are like that and families that are like that. I do understand where a lot of their, not unfortunately, I guess in some ways it's fortunate. I mean, I didn't enjoy it, but it's fortunate in that I understand some of the reasoning and how people think as to why they feel that way about a series with material related to the Antichrist and Revelation and all that. Shouldn't be a thing that comes out. So anyway, again, I disagree with that. People who have those opinions, just like I'm stating my opinion right now, I don't think it's a bad thing, but it is when it gets to the point that you're threatening people. I do think it is to the point when you are threatening people to the point that people are no longer allowed freedom of expression. And this is a fictional story, so for you to get yourself in such a tizzy over something that is fiction is extremely problematic to me, especially if you espouse freedom of speech as something that you believe in. Is this story directly threatening your way of life and jeopardizing your livelihood? No. So calm down, okay? Like, you can disagree with it all you want. You can scream and kick and throw nasty phrases and all the things you want. You can curse people, whatever. I don't care what you think you can do. But I think that people who get that violent about things and are just really, honestly bullying people is really, honestly shitty. And it's very, 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 it's juvenile. Now, the reasons behind why people do that, again, I had to grow up around people, including people in my own family, who are like this, is very passion-driven. It's very righteous. It's considered righteous anger, and I don't think it is. I think that if you are a Christian, the only person who has ever actually had what we can 100% call righteous anger is Jesus of Nazareth. But whatever. And and so I have an issue with that. So when this series Good Omens came out and there were like a bunch of people who were super conservative Christians getting really upset about it, I'm like, okay, this is, okay, okay, cool. Like, you have a right to say that, that's fine, that's okay, but you don't go around threatening people, that's not okay. I don't know what Bible you're reading, but if you actually are a Christian and you actually believe in Jesus, you shouldn't be going around spewing hatred like that. We're kind of not reading the same books, which are in the big book, if that's what you think you would want you to do, in my opinion. So anyway, that preachy ass shit aside, Good Omens was really interesting, and I'm going to start spoiling it right now, so you can stop. Yeah. So, if it's okay with you, just keep going. It's okay with me if you stay. All I wanted to say related to it was actually that I loved the fact that the Antichrist's name was Adam. I thought that was hilarious. It also was an interesting nod, in my opinion, back to some of the texts, because again, I grew up in a Christian household. where it's talking about like it actually like it follows a lot of it has a nod at least to biblical references where it talks about Adam and you know, like Jesus being grafted onto that tree and or the vine or whatever. It was the vine. I think it was the vine. And then like I think about like the idea of the Antichrist named Adam being put back onto that graft. I'm like, oh, you know, that's trippy kind of imagery, but it was just something that popped into my head that I remembered from like all the years I had to go to Bible study. And so I thought about that. You know, part of me was laughing and being like, are you sure you don't want to call him like, you know, some other name that was terrible, like from Genesis? I loved the fact that the four horsemen were depicted in the way they were. Oh my gosh, the fact they had motorcycles. Okay, legit, like, I read this one series and it's pretty smutty, and man, if Christians were upset about that, they'd be even more upset about this series. I don't care. It was called Demonica, and they basically have a demon general hospital kind of vibe going, so it's a romance series, you've been warned. They have actually a branch from that called the Riders of Deliverance in that same universe, and they have the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And it just reminded me of that somewhat, a little bit, every now and then, just because of how badass the four horsemen were in Good Omens. It reminded me of how badass they were in Demonica and in the Lords of Deliverance series that's branched off of that. And that's by, I can never remember if I don't know if I'm ever saying her name right because I've never heard anybody say it out loud. It's Larissa Ione, or Ione? Yeah. So, yeah, Neil Gaiman. I've heard people say his name different ways too. Neil Gaiman is a person who did Good Omens, and just like, it was funny to me. I had so much fun watching the Four Horsemen. I had so much fun watching Aziraphale and Crawley, and it was so good. I loved the fact that the angels in this series, like, it was great because people always forget that like angels and demons, they were, you know, they're kind of like this, but they used to be like this, you know, before some things happened, okay? Yeah, I know that each branch of Abrahamic faith seems to have different stories about angels and demons and the angelic kingdoms and all that kind of stuff. And again, I'm a woo-woo person, so I tend to be interested in reading about stuff like that. So watching angels be depicted in a more, I won't say human, but kind of like a more, not just, you know, pure white robes and like the halo and bright light and I'm so, you know, perfect kind of way, is cool. I loved the fact, like, when I saw Michael, I knew immediately that was Michael for some reason, and then Gabriel was just the fact he was always like in a suit or like really well dressed. Like, that was great. And I guess Neil had to clear up the fact that I guess people were debating about whether Aziraphale and Crawley were a couple. Yeah, it's pretty apparent that it's basically from, you know, the Garden of Eden all the way through the whole series, A History of Humankind, that those two have been kind of a thing. And I kind of felt that way because you don't have to have markers that like kissing and hand holding and cuddling and, you know, like all this stuff to like indicate that people maybe care about each other in a different way than other people. And I felt like that was done actually fairly effectively in the live action adaptation. I don't know whether or not people just need brutally blunt markers about that kind of thing, but I kind of felt like it was done very well in a very tasteful and subtle way. And also the fact that the whole gender performance thing was addressed, I was so ecstatic about, because one of my pet peeves, and also questions about the nature of beings, if you believe in them, that aren't human, is kind of like, hey, so angels don't really have gender. It's just that when we depict them, we like to depict them gendered, because it's something that we understand, or that maybe there's been arguments that, oh, you know, like in some woo-woo circles, it's like, well, so-and-so has more masculine energy and so-and-so has more feminine energy and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm just like, okay, whatever, like, whatever works for you and helping you understand that, I don't care, that's cool, okay? Just whatever makes you feel comfortable in exploring those topics. But I kind of was so happy that Neil was just kind of like, angels don't have gender, and yeah, Aziraphale and Crawley chose to be like masculine presenting. That's what they chose. And I was like, yeah, because no one likes to talk about that. Like, I swear, like, you'll read so many series and they'll have angels in them and stuff, and they'll like treat them as if that's not a thing, that somehow they need to have some kind of solid like gender or biological sex. Usually it's more like a biological sex with a gender identity that fits that in a lot of series, and it always bothered me because you're trying to humanize something that's not human. So I never really understood that at all. I could get in a whole other discussion that would probably tear apart my channel, unfortunately, about whether or not that means that me growing up in a Christian household, whether or not that means that if God did make beings that have no gender, why is it so horrific that there are people who do not believe they have a gender, or that they have been born with the wrong body and they choose to present their gender another way? Is that really a bad thing if we already believe that God made beings that have no gender or need for a biological sex? I mean, I'm kind of I'm not God, so I'm not going to judge you kind of Christian. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I also like loosely use that term because I really don't feel like I'm one ever half the time, because I know, like, I go to Christian circles and I've been told that I'm too woo-woo, and I go to woo-woo circles and they're like, you're too Christian, and I'm like, well, I'll just be over here on my island of hermitude. So yeah, those potentially heretical ramblings of mine aside, I do think that Good Omens did a wonderful just depiction of humanity too. And just like the fact the narrator, I will point it out, dang it, the fact that the narrator for God was what we interpret as a woman was also great. I enjoyed that a lot because I know that would really like grind the gears of a lot of people. And for me, I'm just kind of like, I don't, like where we're reading this from, when we read things, like if you're in an Abrahamic faith, when you read things, a lot of times God is gendered as he, but I always interpreted that as it was convenient for our human brains to do that. And also these were societies where being male was more of a, thing that would give you more authority. So of course you'd refer to God as a he. I kind of think it's small-minded to just think that God would need to be either, quite frankly. But that's just me. So I know that I'm gonna get hella people probably really mad at me for saying any of these things, but the truth is, these are my words. They don't have to be yours, okay? That's So I'm also a very strong believer that whatever goes on in somebody's life, that if you, like, again, I was raised Christian, so whatever goes on in your life, if you still believe that God influences other people's lives, at the end of that person's life, that's between them and God. Like, you can, so it's really interesting, because when I was watching Good Omens, all these like mixed feelings that are like, things that bothered me about my siblings that I've gone to church with. And by that I mean not blood related, I mean like if you believe in family, like a spiritual family, that it's very horrifying to watch when people hate so much. And I think, yeah, so Good Omens brought up and dredged. Neil, you dredged up a lot of things in me and in a lot of other people, clearly, or it wouldn't cause the controversy that it did, and probably the controversy that some of my words are going to cause by posting this video. So I also think that an unexamined, what is it that somebody actually, this is a quote, an unexamined life is not worth living. That, yeah, darn. I'm trying to remember who said that. I'm just so spacey. It was... Oh! Of course it was. Of course it was him. The famous, infamous Greek philosopher that allegedly existed. Socrates. One of the last things I think he said. Hopefully these will not be the final words of my YouTube channel. So anyway, yeah, I wish I had more to say about Good Omens, but at the end of the day, it really had a lot to do with me appreciating how the different types of biblical things were interpreted and reinterpreted in some ways, and creatively presented. I thought that was beautiful. So don't be discouraged, artists. Do your thing, and don't be afraid. So, I guess that's the end of my YouTube video. I'm sorry it was 800 million years long, and I'll be posting something that is probably a lot less long in the coming week. If I don't post again this week, I might post something else probably related to a book. If it's not related to a book, it'll probably be because I watched something and I'm like, I have to share this with you. So anyway, everybody, do your best to take care of yourself as you're able, and I hope to... hopefully we don't get into any really nasty, mean arguments in the comments section. If that starts to happen, I'm telling you right now, I ain't gonna engage in it. Not because I don't give a damn, but it is also because I don't give a damn. And then you can have your space to express your opinion and not have it be distracted by anybody else. Yeah? I have no control of the other users, but me, I have control over that. So, take care of yourself as you're able once again, and this is Kelly with Eclectic Entries, signing out for now.